come on. Boom. Nope. Nope. Boom! The Chaos Knights Codex! That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with a Glacial Geek review of the Chaos Knights Codex. And we are about to find out what is going to happen when the giant Knight Titans of the 41st Millennium come out and become evil. That's essentially what we got going on here. So, this book is going to have everything you need to have a Chaos Knight army with the new models, with the new weapon types, also with all of the other options, which we will get into as we go into this review here. So, opening it up here, again, like all of their other codexes, they've got some incredible artwork and some incredible lore writing. I mean, look at that. That's just gorgeous looking, gorgeous looking artwork that they've got in these books. And I always love it. That's one of the best parts about their codex, one of the things that they really bring to the game that I think really pushes them beyond what a lot of other people, a lot of other companies do, is just their attention to detail, that they spend so much effort making sure that the books look great, and they've got some great lore along with them. It kind of goes into all of these different the different ways that they kind of end up here, like the Path to Damnation, all the different ways that they can end up becoming these Chaos Knights, and then it goes, of course, through some of the different iconoclast houses and some of the different into some of the different infernal houses, essentially going through it. So going into this codex now, you look through it and you have all the same options that you have for knights in the other options. You don't have what was this, Rex, the one from the Imperial Knights one. You don't have like the named character guy, but the Preceptor, right? You don't have the Preceptor, but you do have all the other ones. So you've got any of them, like the Castellan or the Valiant or any of the Armigers. You have access to them. You've got the Warden and the Gallant, all of them. They've got different names, but they have essentially the same options that you're going to have, along with some extra options that you get in only the Knights, and only with the Knights, with these Knights. They also got some of the great imagery of the new Knights that they've got coming out. Some of the extra bits and bobs, and also some of the ways that you can customize, some of the ways that they've customized to make some of the chaosified versions of some of the ones, like all of the Armigers and the Helverns, and also the some of the ones like the Castellan or the Valiant. You're gonna have to use the original kits, and then you can just use it to make them chaosified. So adding bits and adding skulls and spikes and chains and all that fun stuff to make them looking cool. But you're gonna use the same kits that you are with them. So going through here, looking at some of the pictures of the way they've painted up some of the new ones and some of how they chaosified some of the traditional ones that you have here is really kind of cool. Again, that's always one of the things that drew me to Games Workshop material when I first started out, was picking up codexes and picking up armies and stuff that allowed me to just see the paint jobs on some of these armies that they did and some of the work that they did. It was always inspiring and a little bit intimidating, but always, like I said, always inspiring. So again, you've got tons of images of them, which is super cool to be able to see some of the different ways that they've got them going on here. Yeah, that is, of course, not what you're here for. What you're here for is to see how this army is going to perform going forward into your gameplay with them, and how you're going to make a Chaos Knight household. So, going first off, they have two different types, or I guess three different types of Chaos Knights that you can get. You have to declare at the beginning, if you're between two, is whether or not your knights are going to be, if they're going to be infernal households, or if they're going to be iconoclast households. Those are the two different options. They don't make you specifically choose different households, which is kind of interesting and kind of cool, that you don't have to, like, it doesn't divide it up quite as much as they did with the Imperial Knights, but it does give you those two options, and they've got a little bit of difference when you get into how some of their rules work, and how some of their the stratagems that they can choose, and warlord traits they can choose, and some of the whatchamacallit, in the relics that they can choose, and how they work and how they differentiate with it. So you have to choose whether your knights are going to be, like I said, Infernal Household or Iconoclast Household, even if you're going to do Dreadblades, which are basically the Fell Blades of these ones. So they're basically chaos versions of knights that have gone off on their own and left their household and to do their own thing. And we'll get into that further. So they, if you choose Dreadblades, you choose one of those two, but then you also add in that they're going to be Dreadblades. So starting off, we have War Dog, the War Dog option here. Essentially, these are going to be your Armigers or your Helverns. It's both of them, so you can change the weapons options if you want the weapons options for the Armiger, or if you want the weapons options for the Helvern. You have the choice. You have both choices that are available to you if you decide to play the War Dog. So that's what you get to do. You just get to choose those two, choose what weapons options you have. So you can buy both of those kits and run them. And honestly, it looks like you can mix them up, which is kind of interesting because it says any model with 2 War Dog autocannons. Instead, the options you have is they come basically as Armigers, and then you can change out the weapons and make any of them have 2 War Dog autocannons, which is essentially the same thing as the autocannons from the Helverns, and you can swap them out, which means that you can actually run different armies with those with mixed in. So because you can take them up to what is it? You can add has 1 or 2 War Dogs in there. So for each of those, you can add it up and make it different, which is kind of cool. Or up to 3. So I guess it's up to 3. You can have up to 3, and you can mix it up. So if you want some Helverns and some Armigers, because once you deploy them, they all have to be deployed within 6 inches, but then they act independently. So if you want to save some spots in your super heavy detachment, you can take 3 of them, and if you want maybe 2 Helverns to give you support, or 2 War Dogs with the War Dog autocannons for support, and then you want 1 with the Reaper Chain Cleaver and the Thermal Spear, you can do that. So it allows you a bit more flexibility than I think that you have with the Imperial Codex, which is cool. But basically the same kind of deal that you've got going on here with them. Then you get into the Knight Despoiler and the Knight Tyrant. The Knight Despoiler is essentially your normal knights. So you've got the different options to. It says it comes. The Knight Despoiler is a single model equipped with a heavy stubber, Reaper Chainsword, and Thunderstrike Gauntlet in Titanic Feet. So essentially, the Knight Despoiler starts out as a Gallant, but then this model can additionally be equipped with one of the following: with all of the weapons up on top. So you've got the different missile pods and the Icarus autocannons. It can also be following, instead of 1 Thunderstrike Gauntlet, you can exchange that for Avenger Gatling Cannon and 1 Heavy Flamer, 1 Rapid Fire Battle Cannon, and 1 Heavy Stubber, or 1 Thermal Cannon. So essentially you can get into all of the other ones. And the same thing, you can swap out, instead of the Reaper Chainsword, you can have 1 Avenger Gatling Cannon, Heavy Flamer, 1 Rapid Fire Battle Cannon, a Heavy Stubber, or a Thermal Cannon. So I guess you can actually have 2 double thermal cannons. So again, it was kind of what the options that you had previously with the knights, with the Chaos Knights, that you can actually have the double shoots that you want. You can have the double weapons that you want. So again, a little bit more versatility in their loadouts than you had with the Imperial version of these, but you have it again here with the Knight Despoiler. Essentially, all of these Knight Despoilers are the same versions of the knights that you have, the regular knight editions that you can have in the Imperial Codex, except now they're going to be chaos for you. The one thing to note here is Engine of Destruction. If this model is equipped with 1 Reaper Chainsword and 1 Thunderstrike Gauntlet, essentially making it the Gallant, you add 1 to its attack characteristics and improve its weapon skills characteristic by 1. So essentially turning it into a Gallant. So you have your base, all the stats that you have up here are going to be your base stats for the knights, and then you add 1 and make them Gallants if you give them the 2 close combat weapons, which is something to keep in mind because we'll get into that later when we talk about how the points go, because you have to pay a little bit extra on points for a Knight Despoiler that's armed with those 2 close combat weapons to make up for that difference in attacks and close combat weapon, and attacks and weapon skill. And the points difference is not much. I think it's like something like 20 points difference to get +1 attack, +1 weapon skill, which is pretty good in my opinion, points-wise, to get that ability. But then again, you don't have any of the shooting that you would normally. Still have to pay for all the weapons again, so that should be interesting. Also of note, in the keywords, there's no demon engine. So these aren't demon engines. These are just vehicles, essentially. So vehicles, Titanics, Knight Despoiler are the keywords. You have Chaos, Chaos Knights, and then Questor Traitoris, which is where you would insert whether or not you want it to be the Iconoclast or the Infernal households. Then onto the Knight Tyrants. Essentially, the Knight Tyrant is just going to be your choices with the Dominus class. So they're going to be, you know, their Valiants or your Castellans is what the Knight Tyrant is. So you have your all the same options that you have with them, you have here as well. So same stuff, same difference, different name, just to make it go along. A Knight Tyrant sounds a lot more scary, is essentially what it comes down to. But it's also interesting to note then that means that the chassis is essentially the same point value, you just pay for the weapons, which would, I guess, make it easier for them to kind of adjust things on the same level if they need to change points. But that's kind of what they're working with there. Then we get into some of the Chaos specific ones. So the first one we have here is the Knight Desecrator. Knight Desecrator is a single model equipped with Heavy Stubber, Laser Destructor, Reaper Chainsword, and Titanic Feet. It can also be equipped with a Thunderstrike Gauntlet instead of a Reaper Chainsword. So you get your choice of close combat weapon that you want, but you get the Laser Destructor, which is, I think, the new weapon that they've got here. So the Laser Destructor is a 60-inch weapon with heavy D3 type. It's strength 14, which is pretty good, -4 AP, and D6 damage. And when resolving an attack made with weapons, a wound roll of a 6+ inflicts D3 mortal wounds on the target in addition to other damage. So a lot of potential for damage there with heavy D3. Heavy D3 shots doing D3 damage, and the possibility on wound rolls of 6 doing an additional D3 mortal wounds. Again, it's a lot of dice rolls, so there's nothing, it's less guaranteed that you're paying your points for there, but the potential for damage there is super high, and strength 14 is really good. You're wounding on 2s on anything but, you know, like Leman Russ's Land Raiders and other knights, which is pretty awesome. So if you're looking for something to just kind of clear out a lot of T7 bugs for NIDS, or if you're looking for clearing out a bunch of T7 vehicles like with Space Marines or something like that, this is going to be a super awesome weapon to give it a shot there. Again, it has all of the same bits and bobs that you would imagine that the Knights would have, such as the 5-up invul save against shooting, all of that thing explodes, super heavy walker, all that fun stuff. But in addition, you have a rule called Taskmaster, which reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by models in friendly Questor Traitoris War Dog units whilst they are within 6 inches of this model. So they're working on some synergy there, which is kind of interesting. So if you have this guy going up there with the weapons to kind of shoot there, you arm him with the chainsword, so it's a little bit so you know, you've got mostly what you're working with there is the Laser Destructor, and you could just stick some guys next to him like the Hellverns or the War Dogs with the auto cannons. They can become a really strong fire base there, where you get to reroll 1s, essentially making him like a captain reroll of 1s, which is kind of cool. Or you can have him be more of an attack variety and like chasing him in to charge in and attack, and then run him with a couple of the Armiger variants of the War Dogs, allowing them to work with each other, because it just says attack rolls made for models that are in friendly Traitoris War Dog units. So at that point, you know, they get to work together either in close combat or in shooting, which this Knight Desecrator has the ability to do both. Which again then really adds to the ability to run both of the varieties of war dogs there. You can have some that you could keep with the auto cannons going along with them to benefit from the rerolling ones to shooting. And then when he gets in close, all of a sudden you have those armorers to run in and help take down a big target or take down a whole bunch of smaller targets, but working together there, getting those rerolls to 1 in both phases. Then we can move on to the Knight Rampager. This is a single model equipped with a heavy stubber, Reaper Chainsword, Thunderstrike Gauntlet, and Titanic Feet. So once again, this is like like the version of the Gallant here. Again, starting with the 2+ weapon skill, like you would see in a Gallant, also having the 5 attacks like you would see in the Gallant. But the difference here is that he has a rule called Frenzied Rampage. When resolving an attack made with a Reaper Chainsword or Thunderstrike Gauntlet by this model, an unmodified hit roll of 6 scores 1 additional hit. So it's exploding 6s, which is pretty good for them there, getting the ability to get, like I said, exploding 6s. So 6s count as 2 hits instead of just 1, which, as I've played my Genestealer cult, comes in pretty handy when you've got like that Abominant next to your Aberrants helping you out there. So for this guy, he's got the 5 attacks. And if you get that 6, you get 6 hits if you get them all, which would be pretty awesome. Hitting on 2s, which is really, really cool, and really doing some damage there. So essentially, like I said, like the Gallant, this might be a choice for Gallant. We have to check the points. I forgot to check to see the difference in points there between him and the Gallant version of the Despoiler. But we'll check it out. And this gets that extra rule, which is a pretty handy rule. You know, not going to necessarily happen in every single fight phase, but super handy when it does come into effect there. And that's it. Those are the options you have there. So, like I said, you've got the options. You've got the War Dogs, which is basically 2 knights. You've got the Knight Despoiler, which is all the knights that they have there, except for like the Preceptor that the guys have. The Tyrant is the Dominus class ones, both of those. So they've got much fewer data sheets for units in this book, but they cover the whole range. There's no knights that Imperials can take that you can't take here other than the Preceptor. And to make up for it, you have your 2 choices here, the Knight Desecrator and the Knight Rampager, which is pretty good. So that's what they've got there. Again, like I said, the only real new difference here with the weapons is going to be the Laser Destructor, which is pretty good. I think it's going to be super effective for not necessarily for Titan hunting, but it will be really good against basically anything else, if I'm being honest. At Strength 14, there's not much else that you're not going to be wounding on 2s, which is pretty incredible for these guys here. So again, some more awesome artwork they've got going on here. So now let's go into some of the things that make them different. So let's go see the difference between Iconoclast Household and the Infernal Household. So you've got the 2 ambitions that you get if your army is Battleforged Chaos Knights detachments, excluding Super Heavy Auxiliary detachments. So the same difference that you have for the Imperial Knights there. Then they gain the following abilities: Traitorous Lances. Once you have mustered your army, select 1 model in each Chaos Knights Super Heavy detachment. Each selected model gains the character keyword. In addition, the command benefit for each Chaos Knight Super Heavy detachment is changed to none if it does not contain at least 1 Chaos Knight Titanic unit, and it is changed to +6 command points if it contains at least 3 Chaos Knights Titanic units. So essentially, if you've only got the War Dogs, you don't get any CP. If you've got at least 1 of the Titanic ones, which is all of the big boys, you get the regular CP. But then if you have 3 Titanic units in that, you get +6 CP, which is pretty good way to get you some CP, because they've got some cool stratagems going on in the back here. Some really interesting ones, which we'll get into in a bit for, I think, especially the Iconoclast. I'm kind of excited about the ones they've got for that. So let's go over what they've got here. So the Household Ambition for the Iconoclast. If a model with this ambition made a charge move, was charged, or performed a heroic intervention, add 1 to the model's attack characteristic until the end of the turn. And the armor penetration characteristic of melee weapons the model is equipped with is improved by 1 until the end of the turn, e.g. AP 0 becomes AP -1. In addition, when an enemy unit fails a morale test while within 12 inches of any models with this ambition, 1 additional model flees that unit, which is pretty good, especially if they try to swarm you and like choke you up with bodies. you know, having the ability now to one extra little guy getting knocked out there with the leadership is always helpful to get a little bit. And you can still have the Titanic Walker on a lot of these guys, so they'll be able to step over things that are, you know, swarm or infantry, but still interesting mechanic that they've got going on there. So these guys are going to be really good in combat, especially when you tack it on with some of the other ones, like the what are they called? Like with the Rampager or the guy or the other Gallant version, where you've got like 5 attacks. So that's going to be 6 attacks on the charge, or when they were charged. That's pretty good. That's pretty good with the ability to get those attacks out there, and especially if you've got exploding 6s with the Rampager. And the AP is increased, which for the big ones, that doesn't really make too much of a difference because they were always at like AP -4 and AP -5 or something like that, or AP -3. I guess your Reaper Chainsword is now AP -4, so that even 2+ armor saves are being taken on 6+s. But the Thunderstrike Gauntlet is a AP -5, which means that no armor save is going to be able to be taken unless they've got a plus to their armor save. Still got to deal with invul saves, but it's always nice to have that little bit, the little extra something. Or even on the Titanic feet, if you want those extra attacks, you're going to have AP -3 on those, which is pretty handy for that. So then for the Infernal Household Ambition, you get to have the Demonic Surge, because that was Conquerors Without Mercy. Mercy is the name of the Iconoclast Household Ambition. And then the Infernal Household Ambition, at the start of your movement phase, each model with this ambition can use a Demonic Surge. If a model uses a Demonic Surge, it suffers 1 mortal wound, so sort of like the Nova Charge for the Tau battle suits. So you have 1 mortal wound, and you then roll a D3 on a table on the right to determine the rule that applies to that model until the start of your next movement phase. When a model uses a Demonic Surge, you can choose for that model to suffer D3 mortal wounds instead of 1, and if you do so, you can select the result on the table to determine it. A model can only use a Demonic Surge once per battle round. So pretty interesting there, where you get your choice of only taking 1 for sure, and you get a random choice here. Or you can take D3 mortal wounds and still hope for 1, but possibly take 3 mortal wounds, and you get to choose which one if you really need it for a particular situation. So you roll on the D3. The first one is Demonic Hunger. Add 2 inches to this model's move characteristic. Add 1 to the advance rolls and charge rolls made for this model. So you basically get the Witch Knight household. I can't remember which Knight household it was, but you get the benefits there, which is pretty good. You also then have Demonic Fortitude, which is add 1 to this model's toughness characteristic. So all of a sudden now you're toughness 9 on a lot of those big guys, and all of a sudden that weapon that they thought was wounding you on 2s is now suddenly wounding you on wounding on 2s is now suddenly wounding you on 3s, or those weapons that were wounding you on 4s are now wounding on 5s, which makes a big difference. It really makes a big difference having that ability to get +1 toughness. And then the last one is Demonic Power. Select 1 ranged weapon this model is equipped with, add 1 to that weapon's strength characteristic and damage characteristic, which is pretty awesome. Again, having the ability to just like up it to get those extra little shots in there that are going to be super powerful. And extra damage too, which is always nice. So that's what they've got there. So pretty good. And again, you make that choice. So if you really need that extra shooting one, you could be like, all right, I'm going to take the D3, give it a shot and see what happens and go with that. So now going into some of the stratagems. A lot of the stratagems are the same. They've got a lot of the same ones, like they got Ion Aegis, allowing you for 2 CP. It basically uses the stratagem at the start of your opponent's movement phase. Select 1 Knight Tyrant model from your army that model cannot move until the end of your next turn for any reason. Until the start of the next turn, the model's friendly Chaos units have a 5+ invul save against ranged weapons whilst that unit is within 6 inches of the model. So it's basically the same thing that the Imperials have there. Spiteful Demise is essentially blowing up on a 4+, the same thing. Thunder Stomp. Select an enemy unit, infantry unit, or swarm unit within 1 inch of the model. Roll a d6 and a 4+. The unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. Sky Reaper protocol is to use for your war dogs to shoot with the autocannons at things that have fly. Rotate ion shields for 1 or 3 CP. 3 CP if it's a Knight Tyrant. Otherwise, it's 1 CP. Basically, improving invulnerable save by 1 to a maximum of 4+. So again, they made the changes that like the FAQs had. So you're not going to have 3+ invul saves on these guys either. Corrupted Heirlooms and Tyrannical Core, same thing, giving Warlord traits and extra relics to your units, to your army. You have Pack Dogs. Use the stratagem when a Crest or Traitoris War Dogs model from your army finishes a charge move. Until the end of the phase, you can reroll charge rolls made for a friendly Crest for War Dog units that are within 12 inches of the model when the roll is made. So if you got a whole pack of them there trying to get in on the charge, you can send that one in, and if he makes it, then everyone else gets to play, gets to reroll failed charges, which is pretty good. You got Chain Sweep, the same thing. Death Grip, the same thing. But you have Demonic Guidance System, which is essentially the using the Shield Breaker missile that can target characters and does not need line of sight. So it's the same thing. It's just different names to make it chaosified. You've got Full Tilt, so allowing them to charge even if they advanced. You've got Devastating Reach, which is I can't remember if it's worded a little bit differently or not. But essentially, you choose one unit. They are considered to be within 12 inches of that model and must be selected as the target of the... select one enemy unit that is entirely on or within ruins or on a Sector Mechanicus structure, and which has no models on the ground floor. The enemy unit is considered to be within 12 inches, which means you can make your charge roll. So if you have something like a +1, so say you would need 13 inches to get in, they're still considered within 12 inches, which means you can declare them as a charge. So even if you're looking for that double sixes and you just want to give it a shot, you can. And essentially what it does is if you can finish your charge move within 2 inches of the horizontal and 6 inches vertical of the enemy unit, the charge is successful. Otherwise, the charge fails. If the charge is successful, then until the end of the turn, that model can target the enemy unit, make attacks with melee weapons against that enemy unit as if it were within 1 inch of it. So you basically, if someone's on the third floor, or the third floor, so you've got the ground floor, second floor, third floor. I know it's first floor, second floor for the Brits, if you're watching this. Essentially, 2 floors up from the ground, you can still charge them and fight them. You just can't use Titanic Feet. Again, here it says you can try that, but the attacks automatically fail. You don't even have to roll for them. So it's essentially saying you can't use your Happy Feet up there, but you can attack them with your Chainsword or your Gauntlet if they're up there as much as 6 inches vertically from you, which is pretty cool. You have Titanic Duel. This is an interesting one, I thought. I can't remember seeing this in the Imperial one. Use this stratagem at the start, 1 CP, use this stratagem at the start of the fight phase. Select one Chaos Knights model from your army that is within 1 inch of any enemy Titanic unit. Both players secretly choose a number between 1 and 3. Either write this number down or use 1d6 that is hidden, e.g. behind your hand. The numbers are revealed at the same time. If they differ, so if it's different, then until the end of the phase, add the number you choose to the attacks characteristic of that model. But attacks made with melee weapons by that model can only target Titanic units. So essentially it allows you to choose this Titanic unit and you go, we're in a big old duel here. For 1 CP, we're both going to choose D3. So we're going to choose 1, 2, or 3. We then reveal it at the same time. If they're the same thing, nothing happens. So I assume you spent the CP, that's it. No refunds, but nothing happens. But if they're different, then you get to add that number to your attacks. So obviously when you're putting it down here, your opponent is going to put 3 because they don't want you getting 3 attacks extra on them. So they're going to put down 3, but you, because you've maybe decided that this is what you want to do, you can put down 2, and now you'll get to add 2 to your attacks, and your opponent will get to add 3. But if you're one of those rampagers and you're an Iconoclast, suddenly now you've got 6 attacks, 7 attacks, 8 attacks that you're attacking in there with those gauntlets, and you're doing a whole bunch of damage. Your thoughts might be, you know what, I just need 2 attacks extra because I'm on the charge. I'm going to activate this guy first. He's never going to get to use those 3 extra attacks. I'm just going to get in there and punch him to death really hard and make it count and make it hurt, which is pretty awesome. So you can basically get 2 extra attacks. You can then get into like a mind game if you play the same opponent multiple times and they're like, well then if he thinks I'm going to go 3, then he's probably going to go 2, and they could put 2 and mess with your day there for 1 CP. But for 1 CP, essentially assuming that your opponent is going to put 3 because they're not going to want you to get 3, you could put down 2, get those 2 extra attacks, and get those in there before they can. So I would only really use this if you charge, because if your opponent gets to go before you and they've got 3 extra attacks, that's not helpful. So, but you've got those 2 extra attack can make a really big difference. So that's what I would. It's pretty interesting, pretty cool. Essentially, you're looking at guys, like I said, like the Rampager or the other Gallant version of the Despoiler, to get those extra attacks in early on the charge to really punch at them and make it hurt. Then we've got 2 CP for Trail of Destruction. Use the strategy when a Chaos Knight model from your army fires Overwatch or is chosen to shoot or fight with until the end of the phase. When resolving attacks made by that model, you can reroll the hit rolls. So you can reroll hit rolls, which is pretty good for 2 CP with any of them in Overwatch, choosing to shoot or fight with until the end of that phase. So not bad for 2 CP. You just get reroll failed hits, essentially, or you can reroll the hit roll. So because it says the hit roll and not you can reroll failed hit rolls, it means that you can reroll. So if you have negative modifiers to hit, it doesn't matter. You get to reroll anything that wouldn't eventually be a hit for you because you could choose to reroll any hit roll that you want there. It doesn't say failed roll, so it's the same thing like with Call, where he allows them to reroll all hits. They get to reroll all hits, not failed hits, which is pretty good because rerolls happen before modifiers, but you can choose to reroll one that after modifiers will be a miss because it's your choice at that point since it's not failed. Pretty good, pretty awesome for 2 CP. Not bad. Then you've got Break the Enemy Line. This is for Iconoclast. Use the stratagem at the start of the fight phase. Select 1 enemy unit within 1 inch of any Iconoclast household models from your army that made a charge move that turn. So it's basically if you've charged with your Iconoclast, you can choose an enemy unit within 1 inch of them. Until the end of the phase, when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by an Iconoclast household model from your army against that unit, you can reroll the hit rolls. So again, 2 CP allowing you to reroll the hit rolls. So essentially, here you've got the ability to use it twice. So you've got the 1 guys that can go in there, get the reroll the hit rolls against that specific unit, and then you can spend 2 more CP if you want on the other side of the table where your other knight charged in to give them reroll the hit rolls as well. So again, it's hit rolls, not failed hit rolls, so you get to choose, which is pretty awesome. So if you're Iconoclast, you get to use it twice, essentially, in a turn there. This one's a bit more specific on how and where and what happens, but, you know, the same effect, essentially. Then we have these 3 vows, which are very interesting mechanic that they've got here that I haven't seen before. I might have been out of the loop on this, but they're pretty interesting here. So for 1 CP, you have a Vow of Carnage. Use the stratagem before the battle. Select 1 Iconoclast household model from your army to declare a Vow of Carnage. Until the end of the battle, keep a tally of enemy models destroyed as a result of attacks made by that model, adding 1 to that model's attacks characteristic for every 10 models destroyed. That model cannot be selected for the Vow of Dominance or Vow of Beast Slayer stratagems. You can only use this stratagem once per battle. So you get to choose one of your models, and then that model will keep a tally of any models destroyed as a result of attacks made by that model, and you get to add to your attacks characteristic for every 10 models that you kill. So if you've declared it, say on one of your despoilers, and it's got like the Gatling cannon, and it's got a fist, and it's running up there, you can use that Gatling cannon to mow down the screens in front of you and get a whole bunch of kills from that, and then add to your attacks characteristics so that when you get into the fight phase, suddenly now you've upped your attacks now, and you get to punch with a whole bunch more people, but a whole bunch more attacks than you would have otherwise for 1 CP, which is pretty awesome. Sure, it's 10 models, so it might make you have to sit back a bit to kill off some chaff so that you can get those extra attacks, but I mean, for 1 CP, it's not bad. I definitely would be using that one. I think it's pretty good. The next one, though, is something that I feel like I would probably always use in games. For 2 CP, use this stratagem before the battle. Select 1 Iconoclast household model from your army to declare a Vow of Dominance. Until the end of the battle, when resolving an attack made against the model, an unmodified wound roll of 1, 2, or 3 always fails, irrespective of any abilities that the weapon or the model making the attack may have. That model cannot be selected for blah, blah, blah. So essentially here, you're looking at anything that's stronger than strength 8 on your that's attacking you doesn't make a difference, because they have to get 4+ to wound you on the die roll, not the eventual effect, on the die roll. So if they have strength 14, like they've got that laser destructor, and it's got strength 14 and he's shooting you, wounding on 3s, those 3s don't matter. He's still wounding you on 4s as if it's strength 8. It's essentially going to have the same effect as a Melt-A-Gun on you, because you need those 4s to wound on you. If someone's punching you with a Thunderstrike Gauntlet, wounding on 4s is what you have there. That's super powerful. Because of all the weapons that they're going to be probably training on you, they're looking to get some of those extra strong shots there. So if they've got a Castellan that's shooting you with his Volcano Cannon, he's still wounding on 4s, which is the same thing as his dude bro with a Melt-A-Gun is going to be wounding you on. And that just becomes super effective there. You're taking away a whole bunch of wounds before you have to make any saves. So already you're cutting down on their ability to degrade you and take you out. And for 2 CP, that's it. So think about it. How much would 2 CP be able to help you if you got to discount a whole section of wounds that would be coming into you? I think that's super awesome. Makes these guys super effective and makes them super strong at being able to stick around, which is really cool. And the third vow there is of the vow of the Beast Slayer. Use the stratagem before the battle. Select one Iconoclast household model from your army to declare a vow of Beast Slayer, of the Base Slayer. Until the end of the battle, when resolving an attack made by that model against an enemy unit that contains any models with a wounds characteristic of 8 or higher, re-roll a wound roll of 1. That model cannot be selected. So again, it's a wound roll of 1 in fights that, or in resolving an attack made by that model against enemy unit that contains any models with a wounds characteristic of 8 or more. It really makes it a bit more narrow. I know both the vow of Carnage and the vow of Beast Slayer I could see not taking, but the vow of Dominance, I think you're going to take it. If you're running Iconoclast, is what you're going to take that all the time. I think for 2 CP is really the best vow. But you know, punch for your buck there. I think it's going to be really great choice there. So then we get into the stratagems that are specifically for the Infernal household. So again, this is how they divided it up. As opposed to giving you like one specific one for each household, you just basically choose between 2 household and you get 4 bespoke stratagems for those households, which is pretty good. The first one there is Bind the Souls of the Defeated. Use the stratagem at the start of the fight phase. Select one Infernal household model from your army until the end of that phase. When an enemy model is destroyed as a result of an attack made, but with a melee weapon of this selected model, roll 1d6. On a 4+, the selected model regains 1 lost wound. Each model can only regain up to 6 wounds as a result of the stratagem in the same phase. That's still pretty good. If you're running your guys up there and you need them to clear, so you've got your Gallant that's been taking some fire as he's charged up the board. Not Gallant, I guess the Destructor. Who's been taking some wounds as he's just been charging up the board there and runs into your opponent's screen. And now he's just going to Happy Feet, Titanic Feet all over them. You pop that for 2 CP, and suddenly, if you've killed a bunch, you're suddenly getting back some of those wounds, which is super awesome and super effective at just like, anytime you can add back 6 wounds to a knight is going to be super, super effective and demoralizing to your opponent that took all that extra effort to try to pop you down those 6 wounds. It's not always the easiest to do against these big guys. And suddenly now he's getting them back with the Happy Feet attacks on his screen. And suddenly the screen is less effective there because your screen is now, giving your opponent back wounds. So you really got to think about what you're going to do to try to stop them at that point. So pretty good there. For 3 CP, you've got Pact with the Dark Gods. Use the stratagem when an Infernal household model from your army is destroyed but did not explode. Roll 1d6 at the end of the phase. On a 4+, return the model to play with D3 wounds remaining, placing it as close as possible to the previous position and more than 1 inch away from an enemy models. The stratagem cannot be used in the same model more than once per battle. So again, it's like the get back up stratagem that you can use for the Imperials, but I think that's for Questor. Is that Questor Mechanicus, I think, something like that, where you get the ability to pop back up. For 3 CP, not bad. And then that paired with the Bind the Souls of the Defeated is not bad. So you pop back up with D3 wounds, and then if you can charge into his chaff and gain an additional possibly 6 wounds and pop you back up there. And suddenly from 0 to a possible 9 wounds, is not bad. And suddenly your knight is back in the business, ready to, kick some butt. You've also got 1 CP there for Demonic Ammunition. Essentially, you select a Chaos Knights detachment from your army until the end of the battle. Heavy Stubbers detachment from that army. Until the end of the battle, Heavy Stubbers that Infernal Household Chaos Knights models in that detachment are equipped with have a strength characteristic of 5. So for 1 CP, all the Heavy Stubbers in a detachment will get the ability. They'll be strength 5 instead of strength 4. I mean, for 1 CP, it's not bad, especially if they're usually just throwaways, but now suddenly you're wounding Marines on 3s instead of 4s, which is always which is always good. Bumping things up to that strength 5 really makes a big difference in a lot of things. So, because suddenly now, if you happen to have like a internal argument here and you're attacking against some Nurgles, you're wounding them on 4s instead of 5s, or you're wounding regular Marines on 3s instead of 4s. It makes a big difference, and I think for 1 CP, it's not bad to get 3 extra shots for your Dubros there with the Heavy Stubbers being able to throw there, especially since Heavy Stubbers are pretty cheap to put onto your models. And the last one there, Diabolic Rift. Use this stratagem at the start of your opponent's psychic phase. Until the end of the phase, when a psychic test is taken for an enemy model within 12 inches of any Chaos Knights Infernal Household models from your army, that enemy model suffers Perils of the Warp on any dice roll instead of a double 1 or double 6. So essentially, if your opponent is casting a psychic power within 12 inches of any of your models for 2 CP, they will Perils on any dice roll. On any dice roll instead of double 1s or double 6s. So they will Perils regardless. That's pretty awesome. And it makes your opponent then go, well, I guess I'm not going to smite him. I guess I'm not going to do all these things. Because maybe you charged up there and you're in his face with your close combat knight, and they're trying to smite spam you to get you down. Oops, now you're going to be Perilsing, taking D3 wounds yourself every time you do that. So for 2 CP, that's not bad. Really good protection against psychic power. Which is one of the things, there's a couple other things that we'll get into with these, that they have the ability to protect themselves against psychic powers better than the Imperial versions. Where the Imperial, to protect against psychic powers, you need to bring in allies. These guys have the ability to protect themselves, which is pretty cool with like the Diabolic Rift and whatnot. Then you've got the Dread Blade Pacts and Damnations. So essentially, if you give one, if your army is Battleforged, then before the battle, you can give 1 Dreadblade model in each detachment. So it's 1 model in each detachment, Pacts and Damnations. To give a model Pacts and Damnations, first either select 1 pact from the table below, or roll 2d6 to randomly generate 2 pacts from the table. A duplicate result has no effect. So essentially, if you roll doubles, you only get the 1. You don't get to re-roll it, which is interesting here. But you can possibly get 2 different packs if you just roll and get them randomly, or you can choose 1. The choices they have there are Path to Glory. When resolving an attack made by this model against a character or a Titanic unit, you can re-roll the hit roll, which is pretty awesome. Thunderous Charge. After the model finishes a charge move, roll 1d6 for each enemy unit within 1 inch of this model. For each 4+, the unit being rolled for suffers D3 mortal wounds. So, like the, Hammer of Wrath, essentially, which is pretty awesome. Demonic Vigor. When this pact is chosen or generated, roll 1d6. On a 1 to 3, add 2 inches to this model's move characteristic. On a 4 or 5, improve this model's weapon skill characteristic by 1. On a 6, improve the model's ballistic skill characteristic by 1. Pretty good there. Again, you're rolling, so you don't have as much choice in the matter, but still pretty good. Nothing to be, upset about there in any of those choices. Some probably better than others. Like, you're not really going to care about the ballistic skill if you've got your Destructor. Is that the one? Basically the Gallant version there. Whereas the other 2 are going to be pretty good. But if you're also making a base, a guy who's just a fire base, then the first 2 are not necessarily ones you're going to want for that, because they're not going to come in probably as handy. Then you've got Knower of Profane Secrets. Add 1 to the model's leadership characteristic at the start of the first battle round. If any models in your army with this pact are on the battlefield, you gain 1 command point. So +1 command point and +1 leadership, not bad. Then you have Galvanized Hull. When resolving attacks made for the weapons with an armor penetration characteristic of -1 against this model, that weapon has an armor penetration characteristic of 0 for this attack. So you get to ignore AP -1s, which is pretty good. And then Arc Fiend. This model can perform heroic interventions as if it were a character. It can do so if it if there are any enemy units within 6 inches of them instead of 3 inches, and when doing so can move up to 6 inches instead of 3, which is pretty good. So once you've got that, you then have to determine your damnation. So you can either choose 2 damnations or roll and take 1 damnation. So again, you can avoid certain damnations by choosing 2 of them, or you can roll and just let dice determine what you're going to get and only have to take 1. So again, you either choose 1 or roll for 2, or choose 2 or roll for 1, which is kind of cool. I like that balancing that they've got there for those. So the damnations that they've got there, though, are going to be, whilst this damnation applies, so Forsaken, whilst this damnation applies, the model cannot be affected by any stratagems, including using the command reroll stratagem to reroll a die for this model. Oh, it should also be pointed out that if any Dreadblades from your army have any damnations, roll 2d6 for each of them at the start of each of your turns, subtracting 1 from the result if they have the Forsaken damnation. If the result is less than the Dreadblade's leadership characteristic, their damnation does not apply that turn. Otherwise, their damnation applies until the start of their next turn. So you have to roll lower than their leadership. So again, going back there, if you've got the pack that gives you +1 leadership, you're less likely to get the effects of your damnation coming into account. So going over here, then we've got Warp Rage. Whilst this damnation applies, the model cannot fall back and has a ballistic skill characteristic of 6+. So it essentially just makes you raged and wanting to attack, which can have less of an effect if you've just got, you know, one of those close combat knights, but more of an effect if you happen to get it on a ranged guy. You've got Volatile Reactor. Whilst the damnation applies, roll 1d6 at the end of each phase in which the model lost any wounds but was not destroyed. On a 4+, this model loses 1 additional wound. So 50-50 chance of at any phase that you lose a wound of losing an additional wound. Not great. That kind of hurts. Then you have Warp Fugue. While this damnation applies, the model always fights last in the fight phase, even if it charged or has an ability that would allow it to fight first. So always fighting last, not great, especially when you're talking about, like I was talking about with the one where you have the Titanic Duel. That's not going to help you there. Then you've got Single-Minded Hatred. Whilst this damnation applies in your shooting phase, a unit can only be targeted by this model if it is the closest enemy unit that is visible to it. And in your charge phase, a unit can only be selected as the target of a charge by this model if it is the closest enemy unit. So, yeah, essentially just making them only looking at what's close to them. Essentially like the Hellbrute rules that they had there. But you can't override it, which is not great. So again, these are not meant to be happy, fun times. They're meant to be, you know, paying up for the difference that you don't get with the packs. Or paying for the benefits that you get with the packs. Then you have Defiant Machine Spirit. Whilst this damnation applies, when an advance roll or charge roll is made for this model, subtract 1 from the result. And when resolving an attack made by this model, subtract 1 from the hit rolls. So that's really not great if you've got a close combat knight to be playing with them there. So now we've got the artifacts. The artifacts are kind of cool. There's some really cool ones here. We'll kind of go over some different ones. You got Blasphemous Engine. Model of the relic is considered to have double the number of wounds for the purpose of determining what row to use on his damage table. Pretty good. Veil of Medringard. Essentially, it's Iconoclast Household. Both the Infernal one, the Blasphemous Engine is Infernal Household model. This one, other than a Dreadblade. This one's Iconoclast Household, other than a Dreadblade. A model with this relic has a 4+ invulnerable save against attacks made with ranged weapons, which is pretty good. Then you've got Coronate Target. Once per battle, at the start of a fight phase, a model with this relic can activate it. When it does, until the end of that phase, invulnerable saves cannot be made against attacks made with melee weapons by this model, and invulnerable saves cannot be made for that model. So essentially, it means that invul saves are gone for a phase that are involved with the bearer of this artifact. So it's basically once per game, you get to choose the one target that you really want to go down. So you say you're charging into another knight that has that 4-up invul save in close combat that he's going to rotate the ion shields on. You pop that, and it's like, well, now you've just got your regular armor save, and that's not going to be enough against my, you know, against my gauntlet here. You're going to get no saves, and I'm going to be taking down a lot of wounds off of you. But at the same time, if I fail miserably and I roll horribly, like some people like me may want to do, you are putting yourself in a very vulnerable situation. So it's very powerful, but also kind of puts you in a vulnerable position for one phase, is what it does. One turn, one battle round. So one fight phase of one battle round. So it's, I don't know. It's something. You know, I don't know how useful it is. It's very specific. You have to have, you kind of have to have an idea of what you want to use that for before you're going to use it. Then you got Tzeentchian Pyrothrone. A model with this relic gains the Psyker keyword. Here is another thing I was talking about. It can attempt to manifest one psychic power in your psychic phase and attempt to deny one psychic power in your opponent's psychic phase. If that model has the Warp-Haunted Hull Warlord trait, which we'll get into, it can attempt to deny 2 powers in your opponent's psychic phase instead. That model knows Smite. If that model is destroyed as a result of Perils of the Warp, do not roll any dice for that model's Explodes or Dual Plasma Core Explosion ability. It automatically explodes as if 1/6 were rolled. So he does auto-explode if you kill him with Perils, but suddenly you now have a Psyker Knight giving out Smite when he's running into combat, or giving out Smite as he's sitting back, taking out things that are coming to try to, you know, put the bad touch on him, so that he can keep shooting. Super cool, super good, and again, some more psychic defense for Titans, for Knights, that you just don't get with the Imperial versions of them. So a pretty cool thing there, the Tzeentchian Pyrothrone. Then you have the Helm of Warpsight. Knight Rampager, Knight Desecrator, or Knight Despoiler model only, so essentially not the Tyrants or the War Dogs. When resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by a model with this relic, ignore hit roll modifiers. Oh, so suddenly you have a Gatling cannon that is now going to shoot down all of those Eldar flyers. I don't care if you're supersonic. I don't care if you try to put down lightning fast reflexes. I don't care if you are more than 12 inches away and you are a Latok. I am going to be hitting you on my ballistic skill because I ignore hit roll modifiers. Granted, you won't get the benefit of any pluses to hit, but you get to ignore hit roll modifiers. How fun would it be to shoot Eldar flyers at full ballistic skill? And with the way that Eldar flyers are so prevalent in the tournament meta, suddenly now you start taking a Chaos Knights with you, throw down the Helm of Warpsight, and they're going to shoot you. Melt a the thermal cannon, boom, knocking right out of the sky. The Gatling cannon alone is going to knock him out of the sky. Battle cannon, I don't care where you are, what's going on. I have 0 modifier to hit you. I am going to hit you. That's super awesome and super cool option to take there for your shooting knights that are really going to make a big effect in the meta, in my opinion. I think this one's going to see a lot of help, a lot of use. I think this one, the Tzeentchian Pyrothrone, is going to get a fair amount of use, but the Helm of the Warpsight is going to get a lot of use, because especially if you're going to do a tournament, you've got to prepare for it, handling a whole bunch of flyers with the Eldar choices there, and that is the single best option that you can have with these guys to handle the flyers. Then moving on, you have the Daemonis, which is a model equipped with a laser destructor only. This relic replaces the laser destructor and has the following profile: 60 inches, heavy 3, so no longer D3, strength 16, so now you're wounding Titans, Knights on 2s as well, AP -4, D6 damage. When resolving an attack made with this weapon, and unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts D3 mortal wounds on the target in addition to any other damage. So this really ups the power of that plasma destructor. Because remember when I was talking about that, and I was the laser destructor. Remember I was talking about it, and I said that you're rolling D3, so there's a lot of dice rolls that you're going there, and it's also strength 14, so it's not quite as strong. Well, suddenly now you've got something that you can target Titans with. You've got 3 shots that you're guaranteed to be taking as opposed to the D3 shots. You're still doing D6 damage, but it's taken a lot of the... it's half as much doubt in the dice rolls there that you've got going on, and it's strength 16, so now you're wounding T8s on 2s as well, which is super effective. I mean, it's a big step up there, going from just T7s on 2s to now T8s on 2s, because suddenly now Leman Russ spam is going to be suffering from this, and other knights are going to be suffering from this. pretty strong, pretty effective. I like that one as well. Especially if you want to be taking the laser destructor on those guys, which I mean the new models look super fantastic, and I've got no doubt, there's no reason not to want to take it. That if you're going to be taking it, that's I think is going to be a very appealing artifact to be taken there. Then you've got the Tyrant's banner, Knight Rampager, Desecrator, or Knight Despoiler model only. Whilst this model has with this relic is within 6 inches of any friendly Chaos units, add 1 to the leadership characteristic of each of those units. At the start of your turn, if your army is Battleforged and a model from your army with this relic is on the battlefield, roll 1d6. On a 5+, you gain 1 command point. So it's essentially allowing you to try to get back 1 command point per turn, to get +1 command point per turn on a 5+, and it gives you +1 leadership. I mean, there's so many better options. I don't think that one's going to see quite as much, but if you're looking for ways to get some more CP because you're afraid of, then they suffer the same lack of CP that that the Imperial Knights have. If you're trying to make an entire army of Chaos Knights, they're suffering the same problem there, and you've got your answer there if you want to try to get a few more command points back. Because I mean, you're limited to just 1 per turn, so you may as well just have the ability to get back 1 per turn. But yeah, I don't know. I think you're gonna be better off trying with you're gonna have more. The other artifacts I think are gonna do better for you than that. Then you have the Teeth at Hunger. Essentially, it changes out a Reaper Chainsword, makes it Strength +8, AP -4, 6 damage. When this bearer fights, it makes 1 additional attack with this weapon. At the end of a battle round in which no enemy models were destroyed as a result of attacks made with this weapon, roll 1d6, and on 1, the bearer suffers a mortal wound. So it can hurt you. So it's the same thing as like a lot of the other Chaos weapons that they've got there. It hungers for blood, so it's gonna want blood whether it's from you or from your opponent. But +1 attack if you're attacking with that. If you pile that on with a lot of the other abilities that you have to get extra attacks, you're looking at like close to 9, maybe 10 attacks that you can get with these guys easily with that. That's pretty powerful. You're looking at possibility of like, what is that? Like 54 to 60 damage potentially with these guys, and with a strength +8, I think they were strength 8. So you're looking at, again, let me just double check on that. Yeah, you're looking at like strength 8, so you're looking at wounding Titans on 2s with this Reaper Chainsword. AP -4, so if they don't have an invul save, they're not going to get a save, and they're taking 6 damage flat from that. Whew, that is powerful. That is super powerful. And sure, you run the risk of giving yourself 1 wound if you don't happen to destroy any models. At the end of the battle round, if no enemy models were destroyed. So it has to destroy. So even if it takes a bit of a risk if you're going to use it to attack a Titan, because you really got to take them down. But, I mean, with a potential of, like, if you start piling on some of those things of up to, like, 60 damage in 1 round of combat, because hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, you can get the rerolls to hit for easily on a lot of these guys. So you're hitting on 2s, rerolling, wounding on 2s, AP -4. You pop something else, and it's just like all of a sudden it's like, wow, these guys going down. You can put a possibility of 60 damage. That's incredibly powerful. So again, these two special weapons are I mean, they're definitely something that you're going to want to think about if you've got those weapons on the knights that you've got in your army. The next one you have is the Rune of Nachtgra. It's for a Dreadblade only model only. A model with this relic has a 5+ invul save against attacks made with ranged and melee weapons. That model gains an additional Dreadblade Pact and one additional Dreadblade Pact and 1 additional Damnation of your choice. So again, you're getting plus and a minus, but you also get an invul save, 5+ invul save in combat and in against ranged weapons, which is pretty good. So I don't know. It's something, Yeah, I'm sure there's ways to really pump out those packs to make them really effective for a knight, and to kind of mitigate what the damnations can do to you. But it's got a plus and a minus, which always makes me wonder when I take relics if that's really what I want to be doing. Then we've got the Putrid Carapace of Nurgle. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon against a model with this relic, If the saving throw is successful, roll 1d6 on a 4+. The unit that made the attack suffers a mortal wound after the attacks have been resolved. So essentially bouncing back mortal wounds for every save that you make, which is, I mean, again, it depends upon what you're going on. If you're going against another knight, you know, that's punching you with a gauntlet, you're not making saves probably. But if you can use that against other things that try to attack you, you know, it's made with a melee weapon, and you can suddenly bounce back some mortal wounds, which could really be super helpful. So again, if you use them and maybe charge into his chaff, into his screen, you've got the ability now to really start pumping out some extra mortal wounds and to help you clear that screen even faster. Then you've got Bound Viridian Psychogeist. Bound Viridian Psychogeist. When resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by a model with this relic, on an unmodified rune roll of 6, the armor penetration characteristic of that weapon is improved by 1 for that attack. So getting a better AP on your weapons, but I mean, a lot of these weapons that you've got there have a pretty considerable AP anyway, that I don't know if on a 6 is getting better AP, if that's really worth it for some of these artifacts. Because some of these artifacts are, I mean, unquestionably good. That is situational at best, and I don't know. I wouldn't use it. I'd use something else if I'm being honest. Then you've got the Trader's Mark. Whilst a model from your army with this relic is within 12 inches of any enemy units, subtract 1 from the leadership characteristic of each of those enemy units. Whilst a model from your army with this relic is within 6 inches of any enemy units, subtract 2 from the leadership characteristic of each of those enemy units instead. So that pumped up with that in conjunction with the Iconoclast ability to make them suffer an additional person that runs away from failed morale tests would be pretty effective. I could see that being effective for guys that you want to charge in. But again, I don't know. I think you could be more effective just killing them with some of the other relics that they have available to you there. Then you have the Quicksilver Throne of Slaanesh. When an advance or charge roll is made for a model with this relic, add 1 to the result. A model with this relic always fights first in the fight phase, even if they did not charge. If there are enemy units that have it, you blah, 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 back and forth, so on and so on. Not bad. Fighting first is always pretty good, especially if you to pop that. If you're going to pop that stratagem that allows you to get the extra attacks, you know, you're going first, even if they're attacking you, which is pretty good. And it's, you know, especially if you're locked in, it's their turn in the fight phase. You could pop that because you know they can't activate their non-chargers first, so they'll activate their charger first, and then you get to go with your guy. So again, it gives you the ability to know what you're going to be doing with that more. And then you also get the +1 to charge, which is always helpful. As someone with GSC who's added an entire extra second Clamavus to his list in order to get more of that +1 to charge, it's super helpful to have that ability. So that's pretty good. I like that one. And then you've got the Gauntlet of Ascension. A model equipped with the Thunderstrike Gauntlet only, and it replaces it. Essentially, it makes it Strength ×2, AP -4, 6 damage. When resolving an attack made with this weapon, you can re-roll the hit roll, and you can re-roll the wound roll. Woo! So suddenly now, there's no -1 to hit on this one. So this is just going to be hitting on... So if you got 2 up weapon skill, you're hitting on 2s, re-rolling. Strength ×2, wounding on 2s, re-rolling. AP -4, 6 damage straight. When a character model is destroyed as a result of an attack made with this weapon, add 1 to the bearer's strength characteristic, and add 1 to the bearer's attacks characteristic. Whoo! So suddenly now, you now have extra attacks again on top of that, doing 6 damage each, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s. The extra strength isn't really going to make a difference at that point, because unless you have modifiers to your strength because of bad things your opponent's doing to you. But again, all 3 of the special weapons that you can take here in replacement are fantastic and super worth it, in my opinion, to take any of them. There's some really good artifacts. I think this is possibly, this along with the Genestealer Cult artifact set, is some of the most effective and best variety of options for relics for their army that they do. These are super good, super effective. There's a lot of things that you can do that pair up well with the strategies that you have available to you, along with the different households that you can choose. All those different things that you can do to really pump things up, and you can really, with a concerted effort and a good game plan, take very good, very good effect of any of these, of a lot of these artifacts. So there's a lot of good choices here. You should be very excited about these, and I could almost guarantee you that you're going to be spending 3 CP at the beginning to allow you to use more and more of these artifacts when you're making your army. And then we go over here to your Warlord traits. We've got a couple of different options here. So we've got Infernal Quest. If this Warlord is within range of an objective marker, basically gives them objective secured, and it allows them to count as 10 against other objective secured units. So if your opponent has a min squad of troops that he jumps onto an objective, you run this guy up there, he counts as 10 and objective secured, boom, it's your objective. Pretty good. That's super effective, and I think for just a Warlord trait, that's not bad. Especially since you can give it to your not Warlord with the ability to give, you know, with the stratagems that you can pop out there. So I like that a lot. Then you have the Harbinger of Scrap Code. Sorry, Harbinger of Scrap Code. At the end of your movement phase, roll at 1d6 for each enemy vehicle unit within 6 inches as Warlord. On a 4+, the unit being rolled for suffers 1 mortal wound. If you pop that with the other one that just, when you charge in, you're doing it, so suddenly you're charging into vehicles. On a 4+, you're giving them a mortal wound. Then you have the other one where you're doing D3 mortal wounds on a 4+, if you're within an inch. You can really do a lot of damage to units. If you're running up against a list that has a lot of vehicles, so say Guard with a whole bunch of Leman Russ tanks, you use that Warlord trait, you use the other thing that allows you to charge in and do mortal wounds, and suddenly you've got your Destructor guy running in there with his gauntlet and his chain sword, just popping mortal wounds as he gets in there and then finishing him off in the fight phase. It could be super effective double team there. Then you've got the third one, Knight Diabolus. Add 1 to this Warlord's attacks characteristic. So now say you've got the dude bro with 5 attacks. He's getting extra attacks because he is killing things. He's getting extra attacks because he's got this Warlord trait. Getting extra attacks because of that stratagem. You can have like a gajillion attacks doing 6 damage each. That could be super strong and super powerful. And again, keep in mind that these Warlord traits don't have to be on your actual Warlord. They could just be taken with the stratagem to allow you to take Warlord traits. So sure, you probably don't want to run your actual Warlord straight into your opponent's front lines, but maybe you want to run in your fake Warlord with that ability with the extra things piled up there and just do like obscene amounts of damage as you just like reap into your opponent. It could be super awesome. And there's lots of ways to get extra attacks, and when you're starting out with a couple of them, starting out at 5 attacks each, that's pretty awesome. Then you've got the Warp Haunted Hull. This Warlord can attempt to deny 1 psychic power in your opponent's psychic phase in the same manner as a Psyker. In addition, when this Warlord would lose a wound as a result of a mortal wound in the psychic phase, roll 1d6. On a 5+, that wound is not lost. So 5 up, feel no pain against mortal wounds in the psychic phase, and the ability to deny the witch. So again, if you're running into someone who's going to be running a lot of smite spam, it's a thought. You know, there's a lot of ways in this book to protect yourself against psychic powers that I don't think that the Imperial forces have the ability to. And then you've got Eager for the Kill. When an advance roll or charge roll is made for this Warlord, add 1 to the result. In addition, add 1 to this Warlord's attacks characteristic whilst they're wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. More situational there. I probably wouldn't use that one as much. It really forces you to be aggressive, which, I mean, a lot of the things I'm talking about, you kind of want to be aggressive, but that forces you to be like super aggressive. You have to be in their deployment zone before you get that that extra attack. And then Aura of Terror. When this charge roll is made for an enemy unit within 12 inches of this Warlord, subtract 1 from the result. So it keeps people from being able to charge him. So that's not a bad one to be put onto like one of the Castellan versions of the Tyrant. Sitting back and keeping people from being able to charge into you. In addition, when a morale test is taken for an enemy unit within 12 inches of this Warlord, your opponent rolls 2d6, discarding the lowest result. So that's, again, pretty good to help make people run away from you. And keep you in the fight, being able to shoot when you want to with your shooting knights. And then you go into the points. They look pretty standard for everything that's going on there. Like I said, we've got like the difference between the Despoiler and the Despoiler that's a Gallant. And then you've got into the Rampager with the Desecrator. The Rampager is the one, so you got an additional 15 points really. You got an additional 15 points for the these are going to be the tactical objectives. There's mostly the same thing. Nothing really of much note over there. But yeah, you're looking at about an additional 15 points onto the Knight Rampager from the Gallant version of the Despoiler, to get that extra ability that they've got going on there. So that was the Warhammer 40,000 Codex Chaos Knights. An amazing, amazing book. I think this is going to be super effective. I think it's really going to change things. I think you're going to see a lot of people running these. I think you might possibly see a lot of people that had been running a lot of the Imperial Knights running them as Chaos now, which should be interesting to see how they do. It looks like the new kits are going to be super effective with those special rules to really add some oomph and really make an impact. Plus, they look super awesome. They look super, super awesome. Games Workshop has been knocking it out of the park with their models recently in the last couple of years, and I've been very impressed with it, and this is no difference. They look super amazing and super, super cool. So I think it'll be interesting. It'll be fun to have this either as a dedicated Chaos Knight army or as a different way to run your Imperial Knight army, as long as you got some support to go along with it. And I think it's going to go well with the new Chaos Space Marines that they've got going on and everything like that. Pairing them up with these Knights is going to be, I think, super strong and super awesome. So let me know what you guys are most excited about with this. I think it's going to be a cool addition to the game, and I think Chaos players and Knight players are going to be very happy with this book. I think it's going to be super strong, and I think there's a lot of cool combos that you can really work with to get some really awesome effects and really awesome results with it. So I hope that was super informative for you. It certainly was for me. I have been Phil the Glacial Geek as always, and until next time, have fun.